You ever felt or been in a place in your life where you felt that there was more to life, that you were not doing the things that you were supposed to be doing? Well, I'm in my 50 now, and I feel like there's more to life. And it's interesting because, they say that when you're 20-year-old, that's when you're searching for life. That's when you're searching for who you are. But what I've learned now is in my 50s, nobody prepared me for the fact that in our 50s, we're now searching for who we are. We're searching for who we are, what we think, what we want. And this was a big shock for me, especially after my mom passed away. And I thought, what am I going to do now? All these years I spent taking care of her. And now it's like, what's next? And my children are grown and they're off building their own lives. So now at 50, where am I going? And I think that one thing is I noticed, especially on social media, that there's 70-year-olds that are now going to be doing a pageant for the first time. There is 60-year-olds that are having YouTube channels. There's 50-year-olds who are bodybuilding and going to competitions. And so I think our generation now is not settling for what life could be, because especially myself, sometimes I think, oh my God, I'm 58 and how many more years do I have to live? And I'm sure that, if Les Brown heard that, he would laugh because he's 81 and he's still a speaker. So I know that my attitude has to change, but also I think finding who we are and going back. And that's why, I have decided that I'm going to look at, where am I supposed to be? And I want to tell you a story. So years ago, when 9/11 happened, I was a financial planner, and we got laid off, which was kind of a good thing because I was hoping for that. But it's interesting where you're in a point in your life where you wonder what's next. What do you want to do? And so I read this book, which is called "What Color Your Parachute," and in there's an exercise they ask you to do. And that book is about career planning and finding out what is the best career for yourself. And so I looked, and one of the exercises was to look at your childhood and to see what did you play when you were younger. So I went through my list and, I played house. Well, I got married and had kids. I loved counting. My family would my mom would go to the market and she would buy these beans and they would put me in a corner at parties and I would just count and I would just multiply and I would just make little piles. Well, I graduated from university as a business degree and became a certified financial planner, got my securities license. So I did all that. And then it's like, okay, what is next, God? Like, what is next? And the other thing I did do, which may sound a little crazy, is at my house, I used to have this little column at the front porch. And a priest of the church that I was attending gave me a Bible. So I would put the Bible on the column, and I would pretend I was preaching to little invisible people. And, I look at that and it's like, okay, God, like, that's the only thing I haven't done is public speaking. So one day I was actually, having a conversation with God and saying, okay, so I did all this, and the only thing I didn't do is public speaking. And it's like, God, do you really want me to do public speaking? Because that is out of my comfort zone. But you know what? I said to God, I said, God, if you want me to be a public speaker, you have to prove it to me. If you can prove it to me, I will listen and obey. So I said to him, I says, have somebody call me. Don't know when, don't know who, but just have somebody call me. And if my phone rings and somebody calls me and asks me to speak, I will listen. And I said to him, which I think the Bible says we shouldn't do that. But I said, and I'm not going to help you. You're going to have to do it all by yourself. I'm not going to tell anybody of our conversation. But if the phone rings and somebody does ask me, I will listen. And don't ever ask God for something because he may surely give it to you. Because the next day my phone did ring. And it was actually a pastor of our church because my 3 kids were getting baptized. And he says, it would be so nice if you can give a testimony. So, I says, okay. And I hanged up the phone and I thought, oh gosh, what am I going to do now? And in that moment when you want to, run and hide, but I promised that I would obey and listen. So that's why today I'm launching, you know, I'm launching, I guess, myself into an uncomfortable area. And the other thing is that, um, you know, seeing how God talks to us and how he moves in our lives. I mean, how could somebody just call me the next day and ask me to speak if it wasn't something that was inspired by Jesus? And so I did end up making that speech at the church. And I had like 2 days to prepare. But the comments and the reaction I got from people was quite astounding to me, was shocking. And it's like, okay, maybe there's something there. And then, years passed because I couldn't go into it because I had 4 kids, a husband, a house, a mother. And then what I also did is years later, and it was now time when my mom was not here. It's like, okay, now what do I do? So I said to God, it's like, okay, God, like, you have to prove it to me again. Like, did I listen the first time? Were you really you talking the first time? So then what I did is I was in my room one day, just laying quietly, resting. And, I just asked God, it's like, God, can you give me another sign? And then I heard a voice in the bedroom. Well, that really scared me. And I was really, really, like, I was scared. It's like, okay, who's in my bedroom? And I looked around and then I took my phone and I turned it over and this Instagram story started opening up. And there was this lady, and the thing is, my phone was off. Like, I had no programs on, everything was off. And this Instagram story popped up. And it was a story about a lady saying that we have to give her testimony, that if we do not give our testimony and just have the courage to step out in obedience, that our message may not go out there, and that a person who actually needs to hear our message is not going to hear it. And so the person who's, hoping or who should be impacted by us and we're not following through, we could be hurting somebody else. And that kind of got my attention because it's like too many coincidences, too many, just, I guess, too many messages from God that this is what we're supposed to do. And so now today, I'm in a position where I'm going to step out of my comfort zone. And I'm hoping to be able to just, to, I guess, help people learn and trust. Because I guess the thing is, I've had anxiety, I've had fear, I have had worries. And because of the lessons that I learned, my hope is that I can help people with looking at life in a different way, looking at anxiety a different way, looking at just seeing things positively, and also seeing what is possible if they just believe in themselves, if they can look at life in a different way. And for me, it's about living out the fruits of the Spirit and having a life that is filled, that is happy, that is peaceful, and that is, lived to the fullest. And I think mostly it's lived authentically, because I think that's where, as a 50-year-old, I think that we've had so many different expectations put on us that sometimes we live our life based on what we're supposed to do or what we need to do or what we have to do, instead of living life the way we need to and the life that is authentically ours. And I think that this is where, for myself, for example, I know I haven't shown people who I really am. I haven't shown people who I really want to be. And sometimes, wanting to say something but holding back, or wanting to do something but holding back. And I think this is where life can be a lot happier, a lot calmer, if we just accept who we are, accept the person that we are in our own skin, and be able to just live life authentically ourselves without having to just, just be real, be us. And I'm hoping that, I can help other people achieve the peace and calm, and living authentically is important to myself.